Welcome to Culmination, where we're not experts, but we sure have a lot to say. In the process of becoming our best self, I have with me the drum major Annalise Kim to discuss ambition. And with that said, let's get started. So, Annalise, what is ambition?
In the loosest sense, I would say ambition is wanting to do something, but more specifically, it's kind of, I guess like having a drive or like wanting to achieve something.
So, would you mind elaborating? Just because it's still put in broad terms, although I do like the definition.
Yeah, sure. I guess I would say like having like lofty goals, sort of, or maybe not even just lofty, but having goals, I feel like is kind of being ambitious.
In what way?
Because when you set a goal, it's usually maybe not something you can do at the moment, but something you want to strive towards,
Hmm.
doing or achieving. And so having that, wanting to strive for something is that sort of ambition part.
Yeah. So goals obviously play a role into that, but what's the point of them exactly? Like why do we need them? Can't we just strive for whatever it is that we want to strive for?
Um, yes, we can, but I feel like having goals is it's like making uh checkpoints sort of.
Mm,
Because if you just have like a let's say you want to be like president or something, that's super ambitious. Um, and there's no like straight path towards that. And so
yeah.
creating goals kind of like sets up that path of how you would go about becoming president or whatever you want to do.
Right. I feel like that's a good example because something like becoming the president is very ambitious in the sense that it's like I don't know, it's something more grand than like just like a regular field or a job, you know?
Yes, yeah.
Um, like being an astronaut would take a lot of different paths to becoming that versus like, I don't know, obviously working in like food service or even like a more ambitious job than that, like a doctor or a lawyer, something that takes a lot of schooling.
Mhm.
So you think there's like different levels of ambition on that note?
Yeah, I would say so. Because there's definitely like what we've just been talking about with having like these lofty kind of like jobs or wanting to do something like that. But then there's also kind of more of like maybe trying to better yourself as a person. Like
Mhm.
maybe you're ambitious in that way, I feel
Yeah.
like, and where it's more of like a self growth sort of thing rather than having a concrete physical um like end.
Right, yeah, and I'm glad you said that because it's like some people are ambitious to like save the planet, but it's like, it's something big like that, like saving the planet. But
Right.
it's so broad, you know?
Mhm.
It's like in what way? Like saving the environment or helping animals or like endangered species? Like what are we talking about here?
Right, yeah.
So, do you think I'm trying to think of how to word this question, but like it seems like ambition is good just because it's like you have a dream and you want to pursue that, but I could also see how it could be a little intimidating when it's something so grand and possibly out of your reach like saving the planet. It's like, do you think you have to break it down?
Yeah, it can definitely be a little bit intimidating. Um, and I think like breaking it down is sort of like having smaller goals or like having smaller, little more concrete,
Mhm.
um, I don't know, like things, I guess.
Yes. It's just like important to know exactly what it is that you want to accomplish or what you want to do.
Yeah.
So, I guess we can get into this more. And I guess the way that we'll go about this is we'll make it more personal to us. So I'll ask you, what are you ambitious for?
So I want to be a doctor when I grow up,
Mm-hmm.
which to me is a little bit intimidating because there's so much schooling involved, and there's like being a doctor is just it's such a broad word. There's so many different like things you can specialize in, different paths you can go.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would say that's my biggest ambition in life.
What kind of doctor in that case?
Um, I don't really know. I
Uh,
kind of am thinking about like surgery, so being a
mm,
surgeon, or like working in the ER or something.
yeah. Like heavy duty, like saving lives.
Right, like very hands-on.
Hmm. So I guess I kind of just said I said saving lives. Do you think that's where your ambition comes from? Like the source?
I would definitely say that. When I was younger, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I did
Yeah.
know I wanted to leave an impact on the world in some way. And so I think saving lives is definitely that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a grasp of the why, you know?
Mhm.
So do you think there's more to that? Like I guess I could just let you explain everything if you don't mind.
Well, so I feel like with being like an ER surgeon, you are helping people when they are at like the lowest of the lows,
Hmm.
and you're the one who helps them get back up on their feet and recover from whatever tragic accident or whatever tragic event happened.
Hmm.
And I think just being able to do that, like, that's just something that really fascinates me.
Yeah. I'll ask you this. What inspired you to come up with this idea?
I don't know. It kind of was an idea that sort of popped into my head. But
Hmm.
then with like when Corona came and there were all those doctors that were being put to work with all the people that were going into VR, and everyone was like celebrating health cares, and that kind of just stood out to me, I guess.
In what way?
Um, because there were so many people who were like on life support because of COVID, and there were so many doctors that were like saving their lives, and obviously not everyone was saved or was able to be saved, but
Hmm.
the fact that they were able to save so many lives so that there were a lot less deaths than what could have happened if they did nothing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. That I bet you did you probably like observed this, especially at a time where it's so relevant.
Hmm.
And were you thinking about this prior and then it just put it into more of perspective?
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. So I guess now we've covered your broader ambition is to basically make an impact, help people in the world. Um,
Hmm.
this is the broad, like there is nothing specific about it at all. But then you found this idea of a career path. So that's more of the
Hmm.
specific ambition. And as you put it, there's obviously like checkpoints and it's something reachable. It's far off enough for you to have something to work towards, but like it's not completely out of the question.
Yeah.
So I guess because I feel like ambition's kind of like we all have ambition in a sense, regardless of people realize it or not. But a lot of the times it's not concrete, as you said. or
Mhm.
just intimidated by it, frankly. So I know you haven't obviously figured out the nuts and bolts of it all, but let's kind of get into how can we make this happen? Or you, how can you make this happen?
Hmm. Um,
Like what
I
truly goes
definitely
into it?
I think motivation plays a huge part in it because I feel like everyone sort of like wants to save the world or wants to do something really big and grand. But
Yes.
if you don't like have that motivation to actually do something with your life, then you won't.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely having motivation that will help you, I feel like, I guess, make that sort of path in your mind of like how you can reach your ambition.
Mm-hmm. It's like a
Um,
way to actually put it forward.
yeah, yeah. And motivation like gives you, it's like the energy that sort of allows you to drive yourself towards that.
Mhm. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Do you want to keep going
Um,
with other things?
yeah. Um, I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe inspiration helps too.
Mhm.
Um, I guess like seeing other people do things and realize their dreams and achieve their goals kind of inspires you to want to achieve your goals more.
Yeah.
That's all I can think of right now.
Have you really been uh I bet you haven't really been placed in a situation like this where it's like, I have to break down the inner psyche of why I'm doing things.
Right.
Yeah, one thing I'll say on inspiration is it's uh it's all about comparison, like looking at something to compare this to, like, okay, I want to help people. This is my general idea of like working in ER or becoming a surgeon. And this is what the higher ups, the people who have taken the time to pursue that career path, this is what they're doing and what this career looks like. So that's sort of the idea. That's kind of what I think of inspiration as. But I can also think of it like a spark. Like if motivation is the flame itself, this is like the rubbing the rocks together to create the spark, you know?
Mhm.
Because it's like the initial idea that gets the ball rolling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Definitely. Because inspiration definitely comes from like those role models, and then it can also come from, um, well, maybe not come from, but
Hmm.
it can definitely create that spark that will motivate you for
Right.
sure.
Um, and I guess one other topic to complete this trifecta of, I guess, fire analogy is so you started the fire with the spark of inspiration, and now you have the flame of motivation. And the
Mhm.
motivation, the flame, keeps you going, but how are you going to keep the flame going necessarily? You're going to need the fuel. Um,
Mhm.
and as you've seen, like fuel, I guess I could use an example of coal or something. It's like Uh, you have to physically throw the coal in there. I guess I'm thinking more of like a train, how they do that.
Mhm.
Um, so I feel like that metaphor, like the coal here, or whatever source, um, that's more of like the work ethic, I feel,
Yeah.
and the discipline.
Mhm.
So like inspiration and motivation are like the nice things. It's obviously a lot nicer than discipline. It's like I bet a lot of people listening to this are like, "Oh, discipline? Like I have to sit down and do things." um, But I mean, think about how important that is. It's yes, it's the dirty work. Like as soon as you handle that coal, then your hands are gonna be black and dusty, like
Mhm.
from all that fuel, and it probably smells bad, and it's just dirty overall. But you have to do it to keep the flame going. They kind of work
Mhm.
hand in hand together, and the inspiration's like that nice like reminder as well of where you're going. Um,
Yeah.
But, like, the discipline and the work ethic is all of the school using your example, all of the schooling that you have to go through to become a doctor.
Mhm.
And it's arduous for a reason because, first of all, you need to learn all the procedures, you need to learn about the body because you're dealing with the body and the anatomy of people or animals, depending on what kind of surgeon you're like. Um, but also, you just need a lot of practice. And you need a lot of experience because when you're actually working with a real person, it's like you can't mess up on that?
Yeah.
So I'll hand the baton to you. What do you think about all this?
I would definitely agree with that. Like to become a doctor after you go through high school, you do your 4 years of undergrad, and then you have med school after that, and then after med school, you have your residency, which I think can last from, like, anywhere between, like, 3 and 10 years, depending on what you specialize in. Um, so for sure, like, all that schooling, is, like, all of that dirty work, all of that coal that you're putting into the flame, to keep it going. And I do think a lot of people that's sort of where they kind of die out almost,
Right, yeah.
if they don't like, if they can't go through all of that school, which is completely understandable because that's a lot, to ask
Right, yeah.
for, but for those who can't finish it, um, they sort of stop feeding their flame, and then their flame kinda dies out a little bit, um, but I mean, they'll still usually a lot of people find another path. Um, so then that goes back to like inspiration, which will then sort of ignite a different flame of
Yeah.
sorts. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, that's a good metaphor too. Like while you're keeping this flame going for this one idea you have, like you can always switch over to another flame
Mhm.
depending on what you want to do. And I think a balance overall is important. It's like you don't want to keep uh, you only have so much fuel when your motivation is just really like dying out.
Mhm.
Um this is where the metaphor gets kind of weird because it's like you need the flame is the motivation, and sometimes that needs to be higher so you can fuel it with discipline. Uh
Mhm.
in terms of the metaphor, it's not exactly equal, but for it to make sense, it has to be equal. um,
Yeah.
but in a sense, it's like if you have tons of motivation, then the discipline will follow along, and you just have a great balance. But if you only have motivation but no work ethic, you're not going to get anything done, and you're just going to be in the same place, just wasting time. And if you have only discipline and no motivation, then you're just gonna. I feel like that's a lot of the burnout. I guess pun
Yeah.
unintended that
Mhm.
uh, that you described there.
Mhm.
So I know you're not an expert on this. I mean, that's kind of the tagline of this show, but how do you think we can get out of burnout?
Um, I think for burnout, personally, so I actually experienced a little bit of burnout last summer, with diving, because I've been diving for so long and I got not like I was just so unmotivated to keep continuing it. Um, and I found that the break we had from the start of COVID we had like 3 months off. Um, and I was doing other stuff. I did a little bit of baking, reading, just like stepping away a little bit
Yeah.
and then coming back. I felt a little more renewed and my motivation was starting to come back. Um, so I think like finding like little things to do or like something that's completely unrelated and just like taking a break will definitely help, I think, with burnout.
Yeah, that's good. Because it's like if you're like, well, you still have to work hard for whatever you pursue. It's like you can't just go full steam ahead all the
Mhm.
time, you know?
Yeah.
Like then the train's just gonna go on a collision course and it's like you try to pull the lever to brake and then it's like what the lever came off, boss, and it's like, oh crap.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
you have the trolley problem. Um but yeah, you just you need to not even you need to, but it's always good to take a break every once in a while.
Yeah. And I think too, when you take a break, it kind of allows yourself to sort of breathe and like reevaluate almost and like
Mhm.
remind yourself like this is why I wanted to do this. This is why I wanted to become a doctor. And like being able to see that kind of like gives you more motivation then to then keep going.
Right, yeah. Or also, I have an example of like when it's good to take a step back. When I make music, I'm not like a full music composer, but I dabble. And when I've made songs in the past, it's like I would want to work super hard on them and then like try to complete it all in a day. But then when you notice the next day, like you stop for the night and then you listen to it the next day. It's so weird. Like it feels like its own phenomenon of weirdness. Of when you
Mhm.
listen to it the next day, it's like I've heard this song over and over again yesterday, but why when I listen to it today in a new day does it sound so different? Like I hear these flaws that I didn't hear prior.
Mhm.
It's just so weird to me, but I guess that's important. It's like you can't just grind that out. I mean, it's good to work really hard on that, and because I worked so hard on it, I had a lot to work with the next day. So there's benefits to it. I'm not saying don't do that.
Yeah.
But to like say I'm gonna complete it and like publish this after today, it's like no, you need to evaluate it. But it's almost
Mhm.
like that night of rest almost made my opinions almost as valuable as if I had somebody else listen to it because my
Yeah.
mind was a lot clearer, I guess.
Mhm. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's just what I've noticed with that, like why it's good to take a break sometimes.
Mhm.
Um, let me see. So let's talk about band real quick, just because I know that you're a drum major now.
Sure.
And first off, would you mind like saying what that is? Because I'm not sure if that's like a universal thing that people know of.
Yeah, so in marching band, the drum majors, it's a leadership position. It's a student or students who they usually stand up on podiums and they are the ones who conduct the band. They lead them, keep time. They also help lead rehearsals and just keep everything running smoothly.
Um, and I just want to get into that because, and I'll explain this first real quick. I actually met you from marching band because we were both in the pit together, which is the front ensemble. We're in the front of the show. We don't march, but we play like these big instruments like marimbas, xylophones. You were playing the synth, which is basically piano with synth tracks. Um, I probably could have just said synths and people would get the point, but I'm sorry to insult your intelligence, guys, but I don't know. But yeah, I just thought it was really cool that. Oh yeah, wait, you were a clarinet first
Yes,
before
I was a
that.
clarinet my freshman year.
Yeah, so you were a clarinet, and then you came to the pit, and then
Mhm.
and then I noticed the next year, and that's when I stopped attending band. That's when I quit band. Um, and I just remember seeing you as the drum major, and I was like, at first I was like, what? Like that's crazy. Um, and now you're doing it again this next year.
Mhm.
So, what was the ambitious journey here from freshman year to now, I guess?
Um, well, so with band, I never really intended to be a drum major. Um,
Mhm.
I just really enjoyed playing, and I didn't really have any grand ambitions for marching band other than to enjoy the experience and make lasting friendships,
Yeah.
and get to experience the uniqueness of marching band. Um, but I really liked, getting to be in the different sections since I played a wind instrument my freshman year, and then I moved to percussion. Um, and honestly, I might have considered color guard if I had not done if I had not become a drum major, just so I could experience, all the different sections in marching band.
Yeah.
Um, but so I wanted to be I wanted to have, like, a leadership role, but sort of a smaller one, like a general manager, just like a section leader, just something like that.
Mhm.
And so one of the band directors, Mr. Galti, actually, he called me up after I had filled out the application, and he told me that he really enjoyed reading my application and thought that I should apply for a drum major. Um, and so that's something that I had never actually really considered doing. Like, I never thought that I would be the one standing up and conducting everyone. I just thought I'd be a player my whole life. But so I jumped at the opportunity, and it's been wonderful.
Yeah, was it hard to step up to the plate? Like, that's a pretty big integral role.
Yeah, it was very nerve-wracking at first, because it is such a big role. I just didn't feel like I was up to it almost, because it was such a big change from what I've been used to.
Yeah.
Um, but Mr. Galti helped me a lot, and I feel like I gained a lot of self-confidence, I guess, from being a
Mhm.
drum major.
Definitely.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, let me think here. I think that was also a really interesting point that you brought up in passing where it's like, you were just trying to kinda engage in the spice of the marching band, like the variety, in all
Mhm.
the sections. Um, and it's weird how ambition can work sometimes because it's like you have one small ambition to just, like, experience all that you can, make friendships, have fun overall, and then
Mhm.
out of nowhere, just, like, an opportunity shows up and gives you, all of a sudden, a new grander ambition.
Yeah, for sure.
And I guess when that happens, you just have to, I don't know, it's just another thing to consider.
Mhm.
Um, and I bet you would have been fine if you didn't take it, but do you think you're better off now that you did?
I think so, yeah, because I feel like I've learned a lot being a drum major. I've learned a lot about leadership, um, and I've also learned about myself too a little bit more.
Yeah. Ah, I just had something. Oh, yeah. I wanted to say this too. I find it interesting that I've always known drum majors, like, from my time in marching band, but I thought it was kind of special that you were one because you had experience from multiple, like, very different sections.
Mhm.
Like, the winds operate completely differently than the percussion section, nonetheless, the pit. Like, the pit was always kind of
On
forgotten
its
about just
own.
huh?
It was kind of always on its own, very isolated from the rest of the
Yeah.
marching band.
Yeah, and I felt like it kind of gets forgotten about because of that. I mean, we're away from everybody, we're doing our own things, even from the drum line, which is the other half of the percussion section,
Mhm.
because they march and everything. Um,
Yeah.
and it used to be a lot worse of, like, the, unimportance, I guess, but, I mean, over time, I feel like we've gained more traction, more respect from the quote, unquote, "the masses." But I just thought that
Mhm.
was really cool, and it it kinda meant a lot to me in a sense, in a subtle way of, like, that was my final year when I was with everybody, it was, like, my favorite iteration of the pit. Um,
Mhm.
I got leadership experience, and it was just very nice overall, and although I was expecting to come back that next marching band season, then I, like, ultimately didn't wanna do band anymore. I switched to choir, and then had my own journey there, but I just remember that very sincere feeling of closure knowing that you moved on to a drum major because it's like, you've had experience, so you can kinda we have representation in a sense, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I appreciated you represented.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, do you think even though band is obviously, like, one section of your life, I don't know how big that section of your life is, like, in terms of importance, but how do you think it relates to, like, the rest of your life and ambition and all that?
Um, I feel like in a way it kind of helps prevent, um, sort of just like oh gosh, I'm already forgetting the word. We were talking about it earlier. Burnout, yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, all good.
Um, it kind of helps prevent burnout because it's completely different from, like, school, and it's separate from the rigors and the stresses of school, and it's sort of like an
Mhm.
outlet, where I can just forget about school, and I get to do something else that I enjoy, and so it's just like, um, that kinda helps sort of in a way with my bigger ambition of wanting to become a doctor, um, because it helps keep me grounded almost
Yeah.
and kinda helps me stay on that path more,
Mhm.
of, like, continuing on my education without getting tired of it and wanting to do something else.
Yeah, and I would say it also, like, fosters new tools at your disposal,
Yeah, for sure.
even though you didn't think you necessarily needed it, you know?
Mhm, yeah.
Or, like, now I don't know exactly the responsibilities of a drum major, so maybe this isn't applicable, but, like, if somebody gets hurt at band, you're almost like a first responder, like, you have to, like, notify people that this person's hurt, and you have to do something about it, and in a sense, isn't that similar to the career path you wanna pursue?
Yeah, I would say I would agree with that, yeah. Um, because drum majors are sort of like the connection between the students and the directors.
Yeah,
They're sort of like first responders in that sort of sense, um, which is definitely similar to how doctors are like those first people to really respond and help their patients.
yeah. Don't you see, Annalise? It's all a simulation.
Yeah, it really is.
It's all testing your skills until till the real moments.
Yeah.
And by the way, this was on my mind for a little bit, even though it's kind of random. But back to the whole surgeon thing, and when you were talking about COVID and how you were inspired. Yeah, so first, I'll ask, like, you can drive, right?
Yeah, I
You have a
can.
license.
Mhm.
Did you go through that training of like watching these videos of like the really graphic car crashes and everything?
Yes. Yeah.
What were your thoughts?
Um, it was kind of it was really saddening for me to watch that, and it was kind of uncomfortable almost.
Well,
But
yeah.
it was a necessary sort of uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Um, and it was really like it really makes me see just how fragile human life is. Like how quickly an incident can happen and how quickly things can change and
Right.
um yeah.
Do you think it strengthened your convictions almost though?
Um a little bit. Um I mean at the time, like obviously I wasn't like necessarily super engrossed in it. I
Yeah.
was just kind of like, you know, watching it to get through the class.
Yeah.
Um,
4 hours, yeah.
right. But I would definitely say I think it strengthens my convictions a little more because it goes to show like there's always going to be people in need. There's always going to be people who need help.
Mhm.
Um, and so like as a doctor, my job is to help those people. Um, and yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that also goes to show that you can find meaning and merit behind really anything, even if it's those random, mundane, like 4-hour courses to
Hmm.
like obtain your license. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I know not to text and drive, I know not to drink and drive, but I still have to watch this hour-long video of like an entire soap opera of this girl like going through this whole journey, like talking with friends, leaving from a party, and then having like a brutal accident. And it's like oh okay, I'm just
Yeah.
sitting here on a Thursday night watching this. I get it.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's weird how you can have merit. Like I didn't think I'd be referencing my freaking driving courses in my podcast, but
Right. Who would have thought?
right, yeah, I did sit down and well, I never do for these episodes. It's not like, I'm gonna talk about my driving school experience. Um, but I just have a lot of ambition for this project. So
Yeah.
if it means bringing up driving school, I guess that's what it's gotta be. Well, I guess it's also like the goals that we set, like the checkpoints. It's like I don't know, like
Hmm.
maybe if you experience watching these videos, then you get a little spark of inspiration, then COVID happened, and then now you're really seeing this stuff, and then you start taking classes at school. Like it all just builds upon each other.
Hmm. Yeah.
And like some of it's involuntary, but then it becomes more voluntary.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And you think it's good for people overall to have dreams?
Yeah, for sure. Without dreams, we kind of we would just stay stagnant. We would never try to better ourselves or try to do something with our lives.
Mhm.
But having dreams gives us a kind of a goal, I guess. Like it gives you something to do with your life and
Yeah,
make it
purpose.
meaningful. Mhm.
Yeah. And I don't know. Sometimes when I make these episodes, it's like this is all really great stuff, but I don't want to miss the mark. It's like when we talk about purpose and meaning, it's like I understand that not everybody has that. That's also part of the reason why I make these episodes.
Mhm.
And like I don't know, it's even though it comes naturally to some people, like okay, I know my purpose and I find meaning in this and this and this. How like if you truly don't know your purpose or something, I guess I'll ask you, like, how can you take steps to finding that?
I think maybe just trying to go out and experience different things. Like they don't have to be necessarily huge things, but maybe like take a class you never thought you would enjoy, or like join a club or something. Like maybe you'll find a spark of inspiration there because um it would have been something that you never really would have thought of. It never had crossed your mind until like that point that you do it.
Right.
Um and I think just getting that like the multitude of and the diversity of like different experiences
Yeah.
um can definitely help give you a spark and kind of give you something to work towards.
Yeah. And a lot of these questions have been devil's advocate questions, but do you think it's ever too late to find your purpose?
No, I don't think so. Cuz like adults can go back to college, and like they say you can teach an old dog new tricks. Like there's always time or there's always like um you always have the ability to find an inspiration, to find an ambition. Like there's no age limit to that.
Mhm. But uh, but when we're out of school and or like we're 3 years into undergrad and we still don't know what we want to do at a university that either our parents paid a lot of money for or I have to pay later in student loans, like
Mhm.
what do I do? Well, I know these are like the existential questions, and I'm just like throwing them on you, but I don't know. It's interesting.
I mean, if that's the case, maybe college wasn't meant for you. Maybe that's not where you are gonna end up finding your inspiration. Um, I don't know.
Like maybe they just didn't find what they could deem as their purpose in college.
Right, yeah, or maybe even like you're not old enough, Like I feel like our as we get more experiences through our age, our thinking kind of shifts a little bit. And
Yeah,
so, like as we mature, maybe um you find your inspiration in something that you didn't like when you were younger, or something you had done when you were younger, but you didn't like think much of it at that time. But like when you're older, you kind of have that like wisdom with you that can help maybe, I don't know, help you find your spark of
right. Yeah,
inspiration.
and also as you age, like priorities obviously shift.
Yeah, yeah.
Like when you're 5 years old, it's like I just want to get that toy, like that toy train.
Mhm. Right, or
When
like, "I
you're
want that piece of candy."
yeah, yeah. But when I'm 10, it's like I want that video game. When I'm
Mhm.
uh I don't know, when I'm 18, I want that part in that play in the school play or something. Uh
Mhm.
when I'm I don't know, like when I'm 30, I want to have kids or when I'm just like the big escalation.
Mhm. Yeah.
And obviously that shapes our ambition as well, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I guess these are a lot of good talking points and I think we covered most of everything, you think?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, it's always hard to tell because there's just a lot that goes into these, but
Yeah.
um I guess since we covered a lot of like the gist, we can start closing things now. So, what do you think is the big takeaway of this episode? Like, what do you want to leave the audience with? Yeah.
Um, I would say that you could find your ambition anywhere. And even if you don't think you have one now, there's still time and you can come up with it later. And if you feel stuck, maybe it's time to try something new.
hmm Yeah, I think that's short and sweet, you know?
Mhm.
So, yeah, anyway, I guess we can close this off here. So, thanks for joining me, Annalise.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I think this was a really great talk.
Yeah, it was fun.
Do you think it raised your ambition?
Yeah, actually a little bit. I think talking about my inspirations a little bit kind of solidifies it a little more for me.
Right, yeah. It's talking is almost like an organizer, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
Especially when I'm pounding you with those questions of like, why are you doing this? What is your internal purpose? Where is the
Yeah.
meaning in your life?
Yeah.
Psychoanalyzing you. Uh, but anyway, all seriousness, thanks for listening, everybody. This has been the Ambition episode, and I'll see you guys next time.